Happy Peace Day. My name is Sarah Noble and I'm the curator of the Peace Talks at Interpeace.
And I am Sunaina Bamra, a recent graduate from the Graduate Institute, Geneva. We are your moderators for today and will be guiding you through today's event. We are live streaming today on the International Day of Peace at the UN Council Chamber at the United Nations office in Geneva. This is our 8th edition of the Geneva Peace Talks, and while we have a full house generally, we are now taking it online, but we do want that the Peace Talk gives you hope.
The Peace Talks is an initiative to showcase the inspirational stories of people making a positive contribution to peace. They were co-founded by the United Nations office here in Geneva, Interpeace, the Geneva Peace Building Platform, with the support of the Swiss government. To date, we've had 16 editions in more than 7 countries, more than 150 speakers, and millions of conversations online that we hope to continue with you here today.
Our theme for today is Shaping Peace. In these unprecedented times due to COVID-19, the Geneva Peace Talks aims to highlight the interconnectedness as what happens in one part of the planet affects people all across the world. The COVID-19 pandemic has unveiled some deep systemic privileges, oppression, and inequalities that are prevalent all across the nations. It is now up to us, and now we are challenged to reflect on how we can contribute to peace together.
Our event today is organized by the United Nations office in Geneva, Interpeace, the Geneva Peace Building Platform, with the support of the Swiss government and made possible with the generous support of Salesforce. We'd also like to thank our friends at Visual Live for the online broadcast today. The talks you're about to hear don't necessarily reflect the views of the organizers and sponsors, but perhaps they do. And we're also using social media. So again, you can use our hashtag Peace Talks to share the messages that you'll hear today. And you may have seen that we have a chat box at the bottom of your screen. So please feel free to share your comments. Please keep them positive from what you're seeing. Please share with us what you're doing on Peace Day and where you're tuning in from. We can see that there are people tuning in from all over the world.
All right, let's get things started. We are now going to hear a message from the United Nations Secretary General, Mr. Antonio Guterres.
The International Day of Peace is devoted to urging warring parties everywhere to lay down their weapons and work for harmony. As the COVID-19 pandemic continues to ravage the world, this call is more important than ever. That is why I appealed for a global ceasefire in March. Our world faces a common enemy, a deadly virus that is causing immense suffering, destroying livelihoods, contributing to international tensions, and exacerbating already formidable peace and security challenges. The focus of this year's International Day of Peace is shaping peace together. In that spirit, and to mark our 75th anniversary, the United Nations is bringing people together for a global conversation about shaping our future and forging peace in trying times. In these days of physical distancing, we may not be able to stand next to one another, but we must still stand together for peace. And together, I know we can and will build a more just, sustainable, and equitable world.
What an inspirational message from the UN Secretary General on the International Day of Peace. Sunaina, the importance of us standing together, even if we can't physically be together, in order to address so many of the global challenges that we face today, is one of the key messages that I take from his message.
I definitely agree, and in fact it reminded me of the 2017 Geneva Peace Talks, where Mr. Kofi Annan said, and I quote, that we are the men and women of our times, we are wired, we are connected, and we can shape the world together. On that note, now I'm going to welcome the Director General of the United Nations at Geneva, Ms. Tatiana Walovia. Please, Ms. Tatiana Walovia.
Excellencies, dear colleagues and friends, I would like to warmly welcome you to the 8th edition of the Geneva Peace Talks. It is encouraging that this event attracts such a large and diverse audience every year. Let me first thank Interpeace, the Geneva Peace Building Platform, the Swiss Confederation, and our many inspiring speakers for joining forces with us to make this virtual event possible. Every year, the International Day of Peace is observed around the world on the 21st September. And as the United Nations celebrate its 75th anniversary, this day remains more important than ever. For peace-building efforts, the COVID-19 pandemic and the repercussions pose a serious threat. While its impact is still unfolding, there is indeed a clear risk that conflicts intensify, that violent groups resurge, and that conflict resolution efforts be impaired. In this context, the Secretary General launched an urgent appeal at the start of the pandemic. His call for a global ceasefire needs to be our silver lining from the pandemic. The message is clear. We need to step up peace-building efforts. UN Geneva plays a central role in these efforts as the Palais des Nations is the location of choice to bring parties together for difficult and sensitive discussions. Talks on Syria, Libya, Yemen, the Geneva International Discussions, Cyprus, and Western Sahara are only some of the recent examples of high-profile meetings hosted at the Palais des Nations. Many inspiring personalities have agreed to speak today about peace, and I invite you to listen carefully to their experiences, from bringing peace to war-torn communities to shaping peace through education or entrepreneurship. Let the Geneva Peace Talks inspire you to determine how you can work with everyone around you on shaping peace. Let us now join the United Nations Secretary's call for action for a ceasefire and step up peace-building efforts. Thank you very much.
Very much, Madam Director General, and it's great to be here with you live from the UN office at Geneva. We're here, as Sunaina mentioned, in the Council chamber. It's one of the most historic rooms at the UN office in Geneva. It housed the League of Nations, which was the predecessor to the United Nations, and has served as a meeting point and meeting room for peace negotiations and also for meetings of the UN Security Council.
Well, this is truly a historic room, and there is just so much art here. Speaking about art, now I'm going to welcome our next speaker, Ms. Roberta Ventura, a social entrepreneur with a mission to provide empowerment through embroidery and employment.
My name is Roberta Ventura, and I am a social entrepreneur. I started SEP Jordan 7 years ago with the mission to bring thousands of refugees above the poverty line through their talent and skill through employment. I strongly believe that one of the key requirements to achieve peace is prosperity. In other words, employment. In other words, opportunities. SEP Jordan has embarked on a journey to try and demonstrate that the private sector has a role to play to create such opportunities, and therefore a role to play towards building peace. I come from the private sector. I spent 20 years in the finance world between London and Geneva, and I am using all of the skills and the knowledge acquired over those 20 years to build a global brand with a social impact mission. So what is SEP? SEP stands for Social Enterprise Project. It started off as a project. And we are a brand known for the high-end luxury fashion and lifestyle accessories hand embroidered by artists who happen to be refugees. Our creations are sold worldwide in stores and online. How did it all begin? If you can come back with me to 2013, we are in Jarash camp. It's a refugee camp in the north of Jordan, which hosts over 50,000 refugees and was created in 1967. 4 generations of Palestinian refugees live in Jarash camp. We are there, it's 2013, there's this lady crying desperately. I ask why, and I am told the reason she's crying is that very morning, a wealthy lady from Amman came to visit the camp and handed her a $50 note. She had to take the money because she has many kids to feed, but now she's crying. She was crying because she wished she didn't have to take that money. And this is really the principle behind SEP Jordan, storing away refugees as though they were groceries. And then either ignoring or pitying them is not a solution. We believe the solution is to create opportunities and to see them as active economic agents, just like anyone else. The CEP proposition to the local community is one of employment, therefore, as opposed to charity, empowerment as opposed to dependence on aid, pride, dignity, as opposed to depression. Depression. We work with over 500 artists, women in the camp. Most of them are wives, mothers, and many of them were diagnosed with clinical depression. The staggering fact is that when we ask them what changed since they started working with CEP, 80% of them tell us that their symptoms, depression symptoms, have subsided since they started working with us. I think it's a testament to the power of not just employment, but embroidery as well, which is what we do. The CEP artists are the living proof that superheroes do exist. They have on average 7 children, a husband who most often doesn't have a job or income. They cook meals for the whole family every day, and yet they keep coming back to the CEP workshop to ask for more work every day. They love embroidering because embroidery represents their heritage and because it has therapeutic value. When you embroider, you concentrate, you count the crosses, you can't make mistakes, and that is akin to meditation. After a session of embroidery, they describe the same feelings that you would have after a meditation session, so light body and an empty mind. This sense of serenity which comes after the work is something that is spreading out to the whole community. The CEP artists are becoming change makers and to an extent peacemakers. This is to the extent that through their stitches, they pour in their stitches, in their work, they pour all of their emotions, and they really do make sure the world takes notice about them and their issues, one stitch at a time.
It's so great to hear from Roberta, and she has such an amazing story, doesn't she, Sunaina? I think for me, what I take away from what she's doing is the importance of that an individual can make in terms of her transition from working in the financial industry to becoming a social entrepreneur, and also the way that she approaches people with dignity.
Definitely. I think what is really pertinent in her conversation and her talk is dismantling the parochial concepts of aid and of charity, and instead providing with long-term solutions such as employment. Something else that Roberta mentioned, which I really resonate with, is including mental health in your workspaces especially. Mental health should be a priority which should be prevalent amongst all institutions, private or public, and it is really the need of the hour right now.
Definitely. Yeah. So thank you so much, Roberta, for sharing your story. Now we're going to go to another journey, and that is of Ahmed Abdullahi, who is a Somali peace builder who heads up Interpeace's work in Somalia.
Hello, greetings. My name is Ahmed Abdullahi. I'm a Somali Canadian. In 1991, we had the opportunity to flee the country at the height of the civil war in 1991. And we had the we were fortunate to be accepted in Canada, and then I grew up there throughout my elementary and high school years. And at an early stage, there was this kind of gap in between, being in Canada and really what's happening in the country. And so I always had this connection with my country, mainly due to my father working there in the early 90s, and also just that feeling of belonging. And in 1996, I had the opportunity to visit Mogadishu with my family. A few weeks later, we went to visit my grandfather's village about 350 kilometers north of the capital. My grandfather is a spiritual teacher and the chief peacemaker in the region. One of the evenings, I saw people in a circle gathered under a tree. And so I was curious and I didn't understand what was that all about. I sat down to listen. I quickly figured out it was about a lady's home that got burned. And the deliberation was about who was responsible and how much she was entitled in terms of compensation. It was this trip at the age of 16 that I got to experience traditional peacemaking deliberation meeting under the acacia tree. This exposed me really, this visit has really exposed me to the traditional process of peacemaking, and that being led by my grandfather has impacted me in a way that I couldn't imagine, and really defined my destiny to work in the peace building field. Then shortly after returning back to Canada, having this feeling that I do want to return and really have an impact and contribute to the state building and peace building process. But that needed to happen after I was finished with my education, especially at the university level. And once that was done in 2011, I had the opportunity to volunteer for an international organization to come back at the height of the famine and to see the unfortunate impact of humanitarian disaster. That also impacted me, and then realized that a lot of the humanitarian intervention is reacting to the disasters that are happening. So it was reactionary in general, and I wanted to get into the field in which we could really address the root causes of humanitarian. And the root cause is conflict and instability and really lack of strong government institutions. And this is where then I embarked on a journey to look into ways that I can educate myself. And this is where I got the opportunity to study at the master's degree level in peace and conflict studies in the UK. And then this gave me the necessary academic background and while I was focused on the Somali context. And then after that, really, I had the opportunity to work with tremendous organizations that are looking at peace building and working on governance, making the governance systems strong. And up to now, where I have the opportunity to lead an international organization in a country that I was born in, and really fortunate to shape peace in a way that links international priorities to the local realities on the ground. And for me, this is a blessing, really, because being born in Somalia, having to go through experience conflict, fleeing of conflict, and growing up in Canada, that also shaped my understanding of peace dynamics. And then coming back and having the opportunity to really lead an international organization with an international mandate in a country that I'm born in, and to continue to shape peace in that way. And there's two ways that I think that I'm shaping peace. One is international intervention sometimes lacks the necessary understanding of the local context, the tradition, the customs, the sentiments of the people. And so I'm in a unique position to bridge that gap of really aligning international priorities to local realities. And that really is what sustains peace in the long run. And so I'm in that unique position to do that, and have been doing that for quite a while. And the other part is changing the narrative, the single story about Somalia. And you look at the international media, regional media, there's a lot of focus on the negative aspects of Somalia and the Somali people. And so one of the ways that we really impact and shape peace is to show the other side of the story of really this beautiful culture, of this beautiful people, this beautiful landscape, and this resilient people that are continuing to resurrect themselves from the ashes of conflict, and really try to be inspire peace, to shape peace in that way. And also another element to that is to really ignite, right, the local communities, local population, and the elites of the Somali people, to say that you have what it takes to determine your path to peace, right? And this is a very important message that we continue to do. We continue to really push forward, where people to have their own confidence, to take ownership of their land, of their country, and of their really, of the conflict, in order to transform it to peaceful resolution. And this is very important, that there are sufficient local inspiration and local capacities and national leadership that can really determine a sustained peace, and path to peace. And that's my message. Thank you so much.
Well, that was a beautiful and thought-provoking talk, and I genuinely think that it's so important for international actors to prioritize local contexts, because without understanding the national priorities, we cannot really make international priorities. And so I think the international frameworks should definitely include local priorities before we go on to just making something that is completely empty in a way.
Definitely, I agree with you, Sunaina. And for me, one of the takeaways that I take from Ahmed's talk is also the importance of changing the narrative and the challenge of having a single narrative. I think when many people think of Somalia, they might have a very violent picture that comes into their mind, when in reality, there are many beautiful things and very many peaceful areas in Somalia. So I think the importance of changing the narrative and not just having one narrative is quite important in our efforts to build peace around the world. So now we're going to go on another journey, and we are going to hear from Adiba Kasim, who is a refugee and a Yazidi survivor, who's going to talk to us about education and also about her journey.
My name is Adiba Kasim. I am from Sinjar, northern Iraq. I am a refugee for the second time today. I live in Switzerland. In 2014, I faced a genocide in northern Iraq, where the Islamic State attacked us. I had to leave home. I had to take my family and leave home, and became a refugee for the first time in 2014. I decided to send my siblings, my sister and my brothers, and to put them in a boat and to send them to Europe. But for me, it was difficult to migrate. It was difficult to leave everything behind me, as I've lost a lot. I lost many members of my family, my cousins, my friends, my other relatives, and I was not able to leave all of that and to forget what have happened and to go to start my life somewhere else. So after I sent my siblings to Europe, I decided to go back to my country. I started to work with international media and international organizations to support women and children who've been in captivity and who've been brainwashed, and when actually the trauma was big. I was seeing actually that international media is not showing even 50% of what is happening. So that's why I decided to go back home during the conflict, during the liberation of Mosul and Sinjar, and to document what was happening in my hometown. It wasn't easy. It was really hard, and in a way it was bigger than me. I was 20 years old, and when you work on your own pain, it's super hard. So I would have to document the mass graves, for example, where there is the bones of my people and my family in it. But I had to do it because it was kind of responsibility for me. As I belong to this community, I belong to this land where all those people were killed. I wanted to do that, to find justice one day. I wanted to do that, so then the generations behind me will live in peace. I think that no one should go through what I've been through. No one should face what I've faced with my community, with my family. Today I'm working as a fellow at the Geneva Center for Security Policy, as a young leader, and I am also studying at the University of Geneva. I'm studying international relations. I always wanted to be a student. I always wanted to continue studying, but I was not able to be a real student in the past in my country because of the war. Every time I was trying to finish the journey with the study, something new was happening and it was forbidding me to continue my education. But at the same time, it was creating some strength in me and saying that, Adiba, you will do it one day. Adiba, you will become a student one day. You will be speaking about it and you will help the others to go to school as well. So when I was accepted here to be a student and to finally to follow my education, the first thing I've done, I bought shoes, because during 19-20 years, every September, when children were buying their new shoes, new bags to go to school, to start the year at the school, I was not able to be one of them. So after after everything I've been through, the war, the conflicts, the genocide, for the fact that I'm a refugee, leaving everything behind, arriving to new countries, new societies, fighting to be accepted, I finally found peace at the university, in my education and in my work. I want to help and support the young girls and young boys to find their way to peace. It might be through education or it might be through any other thing, because I think we all deserve peace. And also, I think from my personal experiences, we find peace when we find ourselves accepted by the societies, by the communities that they are hosting us as refugees.
Wow, that was a truly powerful and inspiring story, and it's a story of hope, of resilience and of strength. What I loved about Adiba's story was how symbolic it was with the shoes, that she bought the shoes and it gave her some sort of freedom, agency and power. And finally, she can define her own life and she has her life in her own hands. So that was truly inspiring for me.
Definitely. And I think when she said that when she found peace, when she felt accepted in a society, and I think this is an important message that's coming out in many of the talks and many more that we'll hear from.
Definitely. On that note, we are now going to hear from Mr. Inua Elams, award-winning poet, exploring themes of identity, displacement, and destiny.
Hello, my name is Inua Elams. I'm a poet and a playwright. I live in London, but I was born in Nigeria in the north, in an area which has been thrown into chaos by the Islamist group Boko Haram. I'd like to read 2 poems from my forthcoming collection called The Actual. And The Actual is a series of poems, and these 2 poems are called Boko Haram and Deserts. The first one, Boko Haram, aims to bring a humane slant to explaining the cycle of violence and how it plays out across the north, what the young boys who join the ranks of Boko Haram are promised, and what is lacking in their life, which is fulfilled by joining the extremist group. And the second poem aims to bring a mysticism and a serenity back to the north, to the lands where these boys are from. So this is the first poem, Boko Haram. After the guns had danced to silence, the boy whose father was killed joined the others, sipping cough syrup in the tight corners of the parched village, their eyes hungry and hollow for things their widowed mothers could not provide. There were never enough schools to teach the possible rift between thought and action. The boys would lash out wild as scuffling dogs in the scavenging heat, which the men who killed their fathers took for killer instincts and came back masked in the Quran's floral lilt, promising their empty bellies fulfillment, their empty hands purpose, their empty lives love. The boys followed their lolling tongues into the desert, days and nights, tottering past rattlesnakes and scorpions, as the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, had done. seeking his destiny in caves, where more stories of him were flattened like curved knives and slipped like drips of concrete into the broken parts of the breaking boys. Bit by bone, by brick, they were built into the militia of black flags and fire who return to the village now, guns, dancing, who speak into the silence over the fresh corpses to the newly hungry and hollowed-eyed boys, promising fulfillment, purpose, love, their mouths like gardens blooming in the deserts bleak. And the second poem I'd like to read is called Deserts. Take the path that begins among the neem trees, as far as the stream bled of all water. Sift through its dried bed of discarded boots. You will find a rust-covered compass, buff against your sleeve. When it winks with sunlight, go whichever way its needle points north. Turn right where the farmland thins to a grassy sheen. You will come to a village with none of its youth. Place your palm on the closet's hot hut's husk until you sense the wind's quickening tremble the walls. Punch through. Push down into the hole and grab the topmost sash of vulture feathers. Hold one between your teeth until your tongue numbs. Bite down. When you regain consciousness, the huts will be the sand dunes around you. The desert will hold you in its golden nothing. Lift the camel's skull by your inner left thigh. Look through where once lived its left eye. You will find, stretched from horizon to the petrified sky, the answer to whom you were meant to be, how you have bested that self, and why this is still just you beginning. For me, this poem speaks to the limitless of possibilities, of redemption, of love, for how these boys who are wrapped into the violence still have the opportunity to remake themselves and remake their lives. And these are the two poems from me. Thank you for listening. I hope it brings you some serenity and some peace. My name is Inoue Elams.
Hi, I am Luis Figo. This year, a pandemic has affected all our lives. Many people are fearing for their security and livelihoods. Therefore, it is important that we come together to remind the world of the ideal of peace. I am happy to see that the Geneva Peace Talks are happening online. We can shape peace everywhere, on a football field, at home, in our cities and communities, and everywhere we go. We only need to work together. Teamwork counts. Let us pass the ball and inspire others to take action. Our friends, families, neighbors, and colleagues, everyone is important for building peace. I wish you an inspiring event with many ideas on how to shape peace.
Amazing. So, teamwork counts, passing the ball.
Thank you so much, Nana, and thank you, Mr. Figo, for sharing your message. And now we're going to pass the ball on to you, our audience, because peace can be anywhere. So now we're going to hear from Estelle Baron-Hughes, who's a teacher who's passionate about education for peace.
Greetings from Geneva, Palais des Nations. I'm Estelle Baron-Hughes, educator and NGO leader from Cameroon. Today, I want to talk to you about how peace and education have intertwined in my personal and professional life. 1 year ago, I founded an NGO called ALI, which stands for Africa Learning International, to provide quality professional development to teachers on the African continent. ALI works with teachers in Cameroon, in Kenya, in South Africa, in Sierra Leone, and in Senegal. One of our main focus is to honor our African heritage, because without self-belief, change will not happen. How do we nurture self-belief in teachers and in students? And how does this relate to peace building? Here are some keys. As a child, I grew up in Cameroon. I went to school in a state school in Yaoundé, where I was very happy. I remember being very happy at school in Cameroon. There was academic rigor, but also singing, citizenship education. However, there was another type of education happening on the playground. It is at school that I discovered tribalism as hatred of the other with a feeling of superiority. On the playground, there were all of these supposedly harmless jokes about certain ethnic groups. There were some groups who were supposed to be crooks, others were wife beaters, or backward villages. I'm not going to associate the exact ethnic group with the negative stereotype that was used, but Cameroonians know how we treat or consider each other. This makes me think about an experience that I had studying for my master's degree at the University of Geneva and discovering the writings of Nyobe, who is a freedom fighter from Cameroon. He was assassinated by the power that be, but left us with a lot of wisdom and ideals to chase. According to Nyobe, tribalism is not at all a negative force. It is actually the cement that unites the nation. We need to be aware of our identities to flourish as a nation. But this comes with respect and learning about each other. So I focus a lot on these ideas when I do professional development work with teachers via my NGO, Ali. And I tend to remind them of the way Nyobe sees tribalism as diversity in unity. There is a group of children in Africa and in Cameroon who undergo a lot of racism at school. By racism, I want to say rejection, discrimination based on the color of their skin. I want to talk to you about albino children at school. I've seen it with my own eyes, them being rejected brutally by peers. Albino children being neglected also by their teachers, not having the keys to look after their specific needs, and also not calling out colleagues or students when they hear the famous G word that is used to call albinos in Cameroon. I want to say to teachers that respect and anti-racism starts at school. But it can also start at home. It's thanks to my parents that I've learned to respect albino people. They didn't do it out of philosophical conviction. They just hired an albino person to teach us, to give us private lessons at home. His name was Etienne. I remember him coming to our home in Omnisport Yaoundé and just doing his job. And thanks to that contact, I have learned that albino people can teach, that they can coach, and that they can lead. So teachers and parents have a great responsibility in anti-racist education and to support albino children at school and beyond. I cannot end this peace talk without mentioning international education, which is the professional branch where I've been working in the past 20 years. International education is a schooling system that was created 100 years ago to cater for the needs of globally mobile families. But today, in post-colonization world, international education has changed. More and more local children go to international schools. More and more African and non-white children go to international schools. That is why I have started to advocate for the representation of these children in the curriculum, in the staffing, and in the leadership of international education. I want African children and non-white children not to be exposed to Afro-pessimism all the time. I want white children to learn positive facts about Africa and the non-white world. So I think that through research, through conversations, And through positive interaction, through teacher professional development, as I do it with Ali, we can definitely lead change in a peaceful way. And that's what has been my calling all these years. And I want to end this talk by saying that respect, anti-racism, diversity, all of this should be everyone's calling when it comes to education. Thank you.
Peace Talk.
Agree.
It resonates a lot with me because I think it's very important to have diverse and inclusive frameworks in education. We need to have educational structures where children go and they learn more about diversity, where we celebrate intersectionality. Because without it, we are going to keep on being in the same cycle, and the xenophobic behavior, racist behavior is going to keep on continuing until we do something about it, and that starts with education.
Definitely, I agree with you, and I think Estelle's message was very, very important and very clear, and also thinking about the role models that we have, who children are learning about in their education, whose stories being told really shapes the world around them and around us. In our next and last speaker intervention, we are going to now hear from Taimani Reed Emerald, who is a creative who is going to share with us her message of anti-racism and education. And she's going to be chatting with Ron Smith, who's the Vice President of Education Initiatives at Salesforce.
Hello everyone and welcome. I'm Dr. Ron C. Smith, the Vice President of Education Initiatives for Salesforce. So excited to be here to have this super important conversation around race and how we understand the connection to family, to the heart, to the mind, to students, and just really have a conversation so we can learn more as we move forward and really look to change the world. So today we have an amazing speaker who's going to talk to us about some work that she's done, some experiences that she's had, and really look to align the work to help change the world. So I'm going to introduce Taimani Reed, who will go and talk to us a little bit. But first, let's hear a little bit about Taimani.
Hi, my name's Taimani Emerald, and I'm an illustrator and designer, and I specialize in creating whimsical illustrations that promote anti-racism, kindness, and empowerment for children.
Really excited to be here and have this conversation. It's so important right now. It's so important to Salesforce and to the world. And really just want to jump in and really pick your brain and really hear from you about all the great work you're doing. So to start, can you really tell us about the process of developing an anti-racist ABC poster? How'd that come about?
The process is I'm a mother. So basically George Floyd, he's on the ground on our giant TV and he's yelling mama, and that like stabbed me in the heart, of course. And then what just like drove the knife in was my kid coming up to me afterwards saying, "Mama, why are you crying? Mama, what's wrong?" And he's a biracial little boy, he's a brown boy, and for me, I just didn't want to tell him like what the world could do to him, but obviously he needs to know, because he's definitely old enough to experience racism, and he also, being a biracial child, has more privilege than other Black babies in this world. So it was really important to me to create something to tell him about his privilege, to tell him about like the drawbacks that he's going to have in his life growing up, and about how we can change it. And we were learning our ABCs already, so I just thought, we can do two birds with one stone. So I talked to a lot of families in the area and a lot of teachers, and I just said, hey, what words are we being asked questions about by our children? What words do we feel like it's important to define for them? What words do we feel like have really ugly definitions that they still need to know about? And how can we do this in a soft way? And so I just compiled a list, and then I got to drawing, and that's kind of how A is for Allies was born.
I hear the passion and I hear the emotion in your voice, and so that means so much, especially having young boys myself. I can see that the question was hard, and I'd really love to hear when he first came to you, What did that draw? What emotion, what feeling did that come when he came and asked you that question?
Mostly fear. Yeah. I didn't want, I was just afraid to tell him to have these conversations, because for me, growing up, the conversations about racism were, if somebody accuses you of something, just walk away, because that could end up taking your life. Or if somebody, if a white person is a cop and they pull you over, make sure they see your hands. It was the instructions to survive. And I wanted to give him more than that, also because he has privilege. He is a lot lighter than me, so the instructions to survive don't all necessarily apply to him. But there have been times, from the times when he was 4 months old, where a woman called him a half monkey because she saw that I was his mother. And there were times when his brother was denied medical care. And so they have already experienced this racism, and they have already nearly died from it. And I am not going to raise more racist children. I'm not going to raise children who don't know that the world that we live in and the power that they have to change it. And so for me, it was a fear, but also just a pure determination that if I want a better world for my kids, I have to make it. I mentioned that my children are biracial. Obviously, my husband is white. And we were having those very intense conversations in our home, because he's coming from a place of privilege. He's coming from a place of never having to experience racism outside of our relationship. And it is truly a completely different world that he gets to live in. And I say gets to because it is a privilege to be a white person in America. And I also, it just kind of hit me one day when we're having these conversations about things that his parents might say or things that his friends might say, and how they affect me. And it was just he genuinely didn't know and didn't understand. And this isn't our marriage. My husband and I have been together for a very long time before we were married. And how this divide within a very healthy marriage is going to be so much more of a chasm in a country that is basically at each other's throats right now. Correct. And I was just we have to have these conversations, and I know that we can have them in a healthy way, and I know that we can walk away loving each other, because that's what we're doing in our home. And yes, I created this poster for children, but there have been people all the way up to the age of 60 relearning about racism with this poster, because it just puts it in bite-sized information. And sometimes that's what we need, is to just dumb it down. Just water it down so much, all the way to the very basics of just Black people are being hurt. This is why Black people are being hurt. This is how we can change it. And we don't necessarily need all of the analytics, and all of that is so important still. But at the very beginning, at the very base of it, we can just take away the politics and just say, Black lives matter and Black lives are dying. And just taking away that veil of politics and emotions, which you have to take away when you're talking to children, it has really driven so many beautiful conversations in my life, in my community, and at this point across the world, since the poster is going everywhere, which is amazing.
I appreciate your passion and your emotion. Like I said, it's a hard topic to talk about, but to experience it and then really work your way through it, that's just amazing. So really, thank you for sharing that. Before we share the poster, because I definitely want to see that and have you walk us through the alphabet, just one more final question. Why do you think at the end of the day, and you've said so much already, but just why do you think children and education are so fundamental to the anti-racist movement? Why is it critical, especially right now, for children and education to be linked and growing together?
Because if we don't change the way we raise our kids, we're just going to keep raising racist children. And it's as simple as that. We can't wait for the racist generation to die off, because they're going to raise more children. They're going to continue procreating until they die. just like every other generation, and it just perpetuates the cycle. So if we change the way that we're teaching our children, if we change the way we talk about racism and about slavery and about black people, and instead of saying, oh, they were slaves and mistresses, no, they were hostages, they were people being raped and molested and beat and forced to work. And now we have come out of it and offered so much to the world that isn't even being taught in schools. We are not taught about the black man who helped design Washington, D.C. We are not taught about the black man who made peanut butter that's on every kid's school sandwich. We don't talk about those things. When Obama was president, I was in high school. We didn't talk about him. We were still talking about George Washington and Abraham Lincoln and people who had slaves. So why are our little black babies not being represented? Why don't they get to see good things about themselves? And why don't white kids get to see good things that black people are doing? We have to completely change our curriculum. We have to add in ethnic studies. We have to add in and promote and serve teachers of color as well, so that kids can be learning from role models of color. There is no way for us to change our future if we don't change the way that we're raising and teaching our children.
Definitely appreciate the passion and the words, and again, really inspirational for people to come out and make the change. So definitely want to make sure that that voice is heard, make sure that your story is heard, and people are excited to just listen and learn, because that's how it starts. You have to listen, you have to learn. So thank you for that. But speaking of all that, can you show us the poster and just walk us through the alphabet? Love to see and hear more about it.
Yeah, so this is A is for ally. It's obviously the first one is A is for ally. B is for black, C is for colonization, D is for diversity, E is for equality, F is for fragility, G for gentrification, H for history, I for inclusion, J for justice, K for kindness, L for love, M for movement, N for no excuses, O for oppression, P for privilege, Q for question, R for race, S for stand up, T for teach, U for unity, V for validate, W for wealth disparity, X for xenophobia, Y for youth activism, and Z for zenith.
Wow, that is amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. And just a final question, because as you were going through it, I was like, which one stands out to you? When you look at the poster, which one just goes to your eye and you're drawn to it as the one that you want to start with?
To me, I formatted this so that K and L would be in the center for kindness and love, because I do think we really need to reevaluate our definitions of what kindness means and what love means, especially with the colorblind mentality that a lot of people are promoting right now, that, oh, I just don't see color, but that's not safe. Like, we need to see what is happening to our people of color at an alarming rate in comparison to white citizens, and it would be a kindness to see that, acknowledge that, and help us heal.
Well, Tamani, I appreciate that. I appreciate it so much. And the one thing, if I heard anything coming out today, was the kindness and love that you have. So thank you so much for that. Thank you, and appreciate everything you're doing. And please continue the hard work for your children, for all the other children, for all the other couples that need to hear your message and to learn that through kindness and love, through heart and passion, connecting the heart and the mind, we can change that and make sure the world understands that racism is not acceptable. So thank you so much. Do you have anything else you want to add before we conclude today?
No, thank you for having me.
Thank you.
I think, Sunana, this for me is such an important message about what we teach our children, how we talk to our children, but also how we talk to each other. And I'm really inspired by Tamani's use of the ABCs, something that's very prevalent, I know, in my culture from Canada, in terms of the way that children learn, and to really be boiling messages about kindness and love down to the ABCs. I know myself, I had a lot of difficulty, as most people did, watching the murder of George Floyd and trying to explain that both to myself, let alone trying to imagine how you explain that to a child, because it's so important that children are surrounded by kindness and love, and how we teach them, really, as Tamani said, how we teach our kids is really how we want to shape the world around us.
Definitely, and I am most definitely getting those posters for myself. But no, the larger conversation also here is about unlearning so many structures that we are taught from the beginning. And what Taimani is doing through visual art, through expression, is really unlearning for herself, for her family, for just the educational structures all across the world. And that's just so important, because when we go on with our lives and we learn all these things that we realize are wrong, that our behavior can be oppressive, and it's so important to understand how we can unlearn those structures. And the poster is a brilliant idea to do something like that.
Definitely.
Well, now that we are coming towards the end of our journey with our Peace Talks, I am pleased to welcome Mr. Scott Weber, the President of Interpeace, to say some final words.
Hello, my name is Scott Weber, the President of Interpeace. We've heard powerful stories today from our wonderful speakers. Ordinary people achieving extraordinary things to build peace in their communities. The one that's going to stick with me most, I think, is Adiba, and her strong sense of purpose to build peace in order to ensure that young girls and young boys don't have to live through the tragic events that she lived through as a child. And as you digest what you've heard today, I want you to ask yourselves, how can I shape peace in my community? How can I shape peace in the world? And please do share your ideas and your stories with us, either in the chat space or online on social media using hashtag Peace Talks. And if you want to hear more inspiring stories like the ones you heard today, go to our website at peacetalks.net. Now, you have been a wonderful audience, very patient with us during these challenging technical difficulties that we've faced in trying to bring you the Peace Talks in a fully online format this year. So on behalf of the UN office at Geneva, Interpeace, the Geneva Peace Building Platform, the Swiss government, and our partners at Salesforce, we thank you, and happy Peace Day.